Hi, everybody. For this video, we're going to talk about chapter 10, which is all about advertising. And we tend to think about advertising as electronic media, so radio, television, but it's much, much more than that. Think about all the ways that advertising inundates your lives. It's in handbills, in billboards, it's on the internet. So it's more than just the electronic media. Ancient handbills have been found in Greek and Roman ruins and were very popular in the Middle Ages. They were ways to spread information rather quickly by passing it from person to person. And some early billboards, if you look at the lecture PowerPoint, I have a picture of an image on the side of a building that alerted people in Turkey of that building was a brothel. So that's a form of advertising as signage. The printing press popularized advertising as well as the penny presses, which gave rise to newspaper advertising. We have this concept called the news hole, and what that means is advertising is placed first in a newspaper. Once all the advertising is placed, what's left is where the news goes, so, hence news hole. So it's the holes that are left in the newspaper for the actual news. This is because most people don't want to pay a high amount of money to get a newspaper subscription. So in order for newspapers to make money to pay their basic bills, they have to do advertising. So the newspaper model was important as it led to a shift of how media contact was produced. Newspaper advertising allowed for advertisers to shoulder the cost of producing a newspaper in exchange for the attention of the audience. So that model was co-opted by radio and television and is very much alive today. Radio and TV make their money from advertising. The difference there is it's not just an image. For TV, they can have graphics, they can have live action, they can have words. Radio is considered the theater of the mind, so you actually imagine what's being said. So the more creative ads, the ones that stick in your head, are the ones that work the best. Make sure you understand the quiz show scandal and why it was important. The quiz show scandal changed the way advertising was done, especially on television. After that scandal, you saw fewer and fewer shows being sponsored by a single advertiser because it gave the advertiser too much power because they were the primary financial source for that television show. So in television markets, they were limited, so advertisers paid a premium for space. So ad costs in the 1940s were the highest rates in history. Marketers had to focus their ads often on one unique selling proposition rather than detailed information about a product. And that's because they have limited time. So in over the years, television advertisements have become shorter and shorter. In the 1940s and 1950s, it wasn't unusual to see a commercial that was a minute and a half to 2 minutes long, where they could give more details about what the advertiser does or what the product does. So in the lecture slides, I have links to commercials, both Colgate, but one from the 1950s and one from, I believe, just last year. So it's just a couple of months old. And you can see that the one commercial is between a minute and a half and 2 minutes, and it talks very intensely about what the product does, where the other product is 30 seconds. And those actually might be in the chapter 9 slides now that I think about it, because I think I might have used those as an example of authority in a regular commercial, but they still show that difference in time. So you have to narrow down your focus, and that leads to the unique selling proposition. So think about being here at NDSU, when you see ads, when you look at the website, when you look at signage around campus, what is NDSU's unique selling proposition? And that is that it's student-focused, land-grant research institution. I know I have a commercial in the lecture slides for advertising for Chapter 10 that's an old M&M commercial. And their unique selling proposition is talked about in the textbook as well. and it's melt in your mouth, not in your hands. And that came from soldiers that were carrying the candies with them at war, and that was some of the main feedback. Audience reach became the most important aim for an ad in television, and it's the same with radio. And reach has to do with the area of coverage. So how far your signal goes, how much area in miles do you have viewers? So how far does your signal go? And that determines how far your reach is. To some extent, social media has changed how we consider the importance of reach, because you aren't limited to signal strength or demographics. So technology allows us to track an ad's click-through rate rather than just its exposure. And click-through rate has to do with how many times an ad has been clicked or a website has been clicked. So do you click through when you're on a web page to an actual ad? Advertisers can also pay to have sponsored links, which show up in keyboard-based web searches. So those are those ads that pop up in your Facebook news feed, and they have that little sponsored signal in there. Social media and big data are an increasing concern. So because of the vast amount of personal data created by users, that's used by advertisers to target users with ads. That's the big data. And we've talked about big data before. And with big data, there's the volume, which is simply how much is there. The velocity, so how fast can it be collected and analyzed. The variety is how broad is that information. And veracity is, can we trust it? And there was an interesting story out a few years ago having to do with Target, and a man complained that his daughter received coupons for baby products in the mail from Target. And he was all up in arms because she's a teenager. And it turns out that big data, purchases she made at Target, they made an assumption based on other people's purchases that because she purchased product X, Y, and Z, that it was likely that she would be pregnant. So because of that, they sent her these coupons. So, her father was concerned, of course, but then later found out that she was in fact pregnant. The key takeaway to this is that all that big data, it's an assumption. It's not always correct, but here's a case where it actually was. And that does freak some people out. Today's media users are often on several different platforms at once, which is counter to the replacement hypothesis. And the replacement hypothesis says that you have to let go of one piece of technology in order to fully engage in another piece. So to counter the replacement hypotheses, I'm recording this lecture on my iPhone while I have lecture slides up on my laptop, and I'm fully engaged in both. So I didn't have to give up one to be able to use the other. Could I do this all the time? No, because I have limited mental capacity, but I am able to use multiple platforms at a time. As newer media evolve, older media find new roles, which is a theory of media niche. So that's why some media does tend to go away, or we change the way we use it. Media tend to complement rather than compete, leading to a new field of integrated marketing communication. And that simply means that marketing can be done on multiple platforms. So you'll see ads in your apps on your phone that may be similar to ads on websites. They may be similar to billboards or radio ads or TV ads. So advertisers have learned that they need to have an integrated marketing plan in order to reach more people, because we are using multiple levels. Another thing that isn't in the textbook, but I think it's important for you to understand, it's in the lecture slides, and it's about clickbait. And clickbait are those stories that come up quite often in Facebook, is where I see them the most often, where they have these outrageous headlines, and they draw you in because you're curious about that headline. And sometimes it's celebrity driven. Actually, many times it's celebrity driven. You click on this headline because you're curious. You want to see what this outrageous thing this celebrity did was. So you click it and you get to the next page and it's filled with ads. And you have to keep clicking to continue the story, to get the next picture, to get the next paragraph. And that is clickbait because they are trying to increase the chance of click-throughs to increase advertising revenues. So I hope that helps you with chapter 10. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I'll be back with chapter 11 soon.